Okay, week 11 rapid reaction. Y'all know the deal. This is something new we're trying on the channel. Last week we did it where we sat down and talked about 3 football games from the previous day and gave a really quick rapid reaction. And today we're going to do the same thing. Now, once again, after this video is done, I'm going to be chopping it up and releasing an independent video for each respective team. That way, if you didn't want to sit through the entire video, you have your team's content right there. But if you enjoyed this, please consider hitting the like button, subscribe down below, comment. All of those things are massive for content creators such as myself. And today we need to talk about 3 games that I think the college football world collectively is dying to talk about. First and foremost, the Oklahoma Sooners taking on West Virginia. Secondly, we have got to talk about Texas versus TCU because that game was wild. And then finally, we need to talk about Texas A&M losing to Auburn, which seems incredible. But now, let's jump right into this, and we're going to start with Oklahoma versus West Virginia. And after this game, there's a large question. Is this on coaching or is this on execution? And as in all things, I think the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. Countless times I saw Oklahoma have a play call I thought was probably the right play call, but because of lack of execution, it just wasn't able to come to fruition. There were also times where I thought they executed a play call well, but the play call was not conducive to success, so they were already putting themselves in a bad situation. Regardless, this is a loss that stings. This was a game that Oklahoma fans were looking at thinking we're going to come in here, get a big win, and really start trending in the right direction, especially to end the season. However, that's not at all what happened. West Virginia made a quarterback switch, and Oklahoma just never had any answers for it. And during the course of this game, it was really obvious that this new quarterback was giving them a lot of troubles. His ability to run the football just added another layer that Oklahoma was having trouble to account for. But Oklahoma offensively has shown time and time again this season, even though they have the ability to score quick, it's almost their greatest downfall. And the reason I say that is you can score within 3 minutes. We've seen you do it. The problem is you're also an offense that can go 3 and out before the defense has even had a time to take off their helmet and sit down, and now they're trotting right back out on the field. There was a really interesting stat I saw, and off the top of my head I can't remember it, and I was trying to dig for it, couldn't find it again, but it pointed to the amount of snaps that the Oklahoma Sooners linebackers played, and it was a lot of snaps you were being asked to play. And of course, after so many snaps, you're going to get tired. That's only natural. You're in the 4th quarter of a game. You're exhausted, and you've been on the field a lot because your offense cannot stay on the field for sustained drives. And this takes me back to something we talked about when Oklahoma was going to take on Nebraska, something I talked about that I really wanted to see Oklahoma do. Whenever Oklahoma went to take on Nebraska, when that game was about to happen, I was saying if Oklahoma gets a lead, what I'd really like them to do is show us they can do sustained drives. Okay, we've seen you score quick, but can you take 7, 8 minutes off the clock at will? Can you be that team? And when you look at the personnel, they certainly have some guys you'd think were able to do it. They have some great wide receivers, some really solid running back play. The quarterback play has been up and down, very inconsistent, but at the end of the day, it's something that Oklahoma has not been able to do with any consistency, is have these sustaining drives. And when you're not able to do that, your defense is going to be on the field more than they should, and that really came to bite Oklahoma. So it's hard for me to say, oh, this is all on coaching whenever you have so many drop passes, whenever you have so many instances of being put in a place that's conducive to success, but not being able to make the play, and whenever you have so many missed tackles. But in that same breath, it's hard for me to say this is completely on execution when, and I know I'm just going to give you 2 plays, but I think these are 2 big plays. Because in the final drive of this game, it was a 2nd and I believe an 8, and West Virginia ran a little screen pass. Well, on the 4th and 2, they showed the exact same formation as that 2nd down screen pass. The only difference is they motioned the tight end that they didn't motion in the 2nd down play. So the 4th down play, they motioned the tight end inside, giving you 2 wide receivers on the outside instead of the 3 stack that we'd seen in the 2nd down. But my biggest issue is this play is it was 4th and 2. And you called a play where your cornerbacks had 5, 6, 7 yards separation. They had 7 yards separating them from the wide receiver. The wide receiver only had to get 2 yards for a first down. So I understand that there were so many times of lack of execution, but in that situation, it's going to be tough if you have Darrelle Revis and Patrick Peterson when you say, hey, the wide receiver may only need to gain 2 yards, and hey, by the way, we just saw the same set 3 plays ago, and they were able to get successful yards. They've been able to run this play all game. Now they're showing us this same play again, and we're going to once again line up with 5, 6, 7 yards separation between our defensive backs and their wide receivers. At the point where West Virginia saw that, I think they knew it was pretty automatic. Get the ball quickly to your wide receiver, and he takes 2 steps and he's already at the first down marker, where these Oklahoma DBs are having to decide whether they think these West Virginia wide receivers are going to be running go routes or something more close to the line of scrimmage. So you're putting your DBs in a position where they've got to choose, and already they're playing behind the 8 ball. That's where I say, I think there's a healthy dose of blame to go around, but at the end of the day, one thing I think we do need to realize is it gets back to what I said in the last video I made about Oklahoma. This isn't going to be easy to hear, but you have got to give Brent Venables time. This is Brent Venables' first time being a head coach, and he's already shown that he's able to recruit at a high level. You look at Oklahoma's recruiting class, it's still a top 10 class in the nation. They're in great battles. And when you listen to these prospects talk about Brent Venables, they have glowing reviews. When you listen to the defensive players that he coached at Clemson, they have glowing reviews. So I don't doubt Brent Venables forgot how to coach football. I just think it's much different being a head coach than it is a defensive coordinator, and we need to give Brent Venables time. And on top of that, we need to understand the roster turnover Oklahoma is dealing with. Now, I'm not looking to assess blame anywhere there. We're just going to talk about the facts of the situation without assessing blame. Oklahoma had a lot of roster turnover, and they tried to address it through the transfer portal, and they were able to get some guys, but at the same time, we do need to be cognizant of what it is they lost, because at the end of the day, it's going to be difficult for anybody to try and recapture the momentum they had, losing all the pieces they had. But that being said, this is still a loss that really hurts. This is a team in West Virginia. You thought you'd be able to come in here and get a nice win, something to continue building off of. So where does Oklahoma go from here? And that's what's going to be really interesting to watch. These next few games are going to be very telling, and it's not going to be getting much easier. You take on Oklahoma State next. They've been a team that's shown a lot this year. So if you want to get a big response win, there's no better time to do it than against Oklahoma State, your in-state rival, because that will at least be something you can start building some positivity off of. This is going to be something we're going to be keeping up with. We're going to be talking about Oklahoma throughout the week, and of course, we're going to be having on all the great Oklahoma content creators so that we can break down this game further tomorrow, 5:30 during the live stream. Can't wait to see you there. But now let's move on to the Texas Longhorns, because Texas versus TCU was, during the week, my game of the week. I thought this game was going to provide us fireworks. And during the week, I'd actually picked TCU to win the game. But let's be very honest here. One of the reasons I think we have so much fun on this channel is I try and be as honest with y'all as possible. And I made a video picking TCU to win, but all the reasons I gave, they absolutely did not come to fruition. And in fact, I think if you would have given all college football fans everywhere a bingo board and said Texas is going to hold that TCU offense to 17 points, unanimously, college football fans everywhere would have picked the Texas Longhorns to win this game. So while I picked TCU, basically none of my reasons came to fruition outside of 1 or 2. But let's walk through this game. This is a head-scratcher because Texas's defense genuinely played as well as you could have wanted them to. If you're able to hold TCU's offense to 17 points, that TCU offense, you're doing something right. In fact, that's about as much as you could ask from your defense. And on top of holding them to 17 points, your defense got a touchdown. Your defense got a ton of tackles for loss. Your defense got a ton of sacks. Fanatic Perspective always, without fail, does incredible work. But last night, he did an amazing live stream right after the game in the dead of night talking about this, and he made such a great point that has stuck with me through the night and while I'm talking right now to you all. He never would have thought that his team would have lost a game with the sacks they had, with the tackles for loss they had, and with the defensive performance they had where they were able to generate a touchdown from the defensive side of the ball, and yet Texas still lost. That is incredible. That's something I didn't think would happen, especially when you look at the offensive personnel they have and the head coach they have. Now, the biggest question I had for Texas is, are you going to be able to overcome the second half woes we've seen consistently, not only this year, but with Steve Sarkisian? And make no mistake, you can go through my history. The videos are all up there because I'm not going to shy away from the takes. I said it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I'm right, I'm right. It's a learning experience. It's all good. But I'm a Steve Sarkisian fan. I've said it on lives. I've argued with the Oklahoma friends I have that I think Steve Sarkisian could be the guy, but it gets more difficult and more difficult to argue these things whenever you look at the debacles that happen in the second half. Now, I'm not saying I think that Steve Sarkisian needs to be fired. Nothing like that. Texas needs consistency. The last thing they need to do is start having heads roll and coaches leave. They need consistency. They need to let Steve Sarkisian have his time and figure things out. And after 4 or 5 years, then we can have this conversation. But right now, there's still so many young guys. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have complaints. That doesn't mean you can't have questions nor concerns. All of those things are valid. Because when we look at the game plan offensively for Texas, it left a lot to be desired. And I know during the course of that live stream for Fanatic Perspective, there were people asking questions like, why did we keep going deep? And Fanatic Perspective hit the nail on the head. It's because TCU was begging you to go deep. And this is what's really wild. This is where Texas has got to figure this out, because Quinn Ewers has got an incredible arm. He can hit every blade of grass on the field. But you know there's a problem whenever you have a wide receiver like Xavier Worthy, whenever you have some of the offensive talent you have, and a defense is begging you, literally pleading with you, test us deep, because we have no faith you can do that. We have no faith in your ability to consistently hit deep shots. And that's exactly what TCU did. So when people are wondering why did we go deep so many times, that's why. It's because TCU is giving you those opportunities because they were willing to hedge their bets that you weren't going to be able to convert them, and they were right. And I get it, Quinn Ewers is a young quarterback, but man, he's had some struggles over the past few games, especially with accuracy, and teams now are begging them to test them deep because they just don't believe they're going to be able to convert these throws. And until Texas shows them they're able to, you can't blame teams for lining up like that. So this is why I say, I still think this may have been the game of the week. Super entertaining to watch. I had some friends over. We were watching it. It was a ton of fun. But I don't think anybody would have thought this game was going to go down the way it was. I don't think anybody in college football thought this game is only going to have 27 points scored and in the first quarter have less than 20 yards of offense. It was awesome to watch. It was really cool, but it's going to lead to interesting conversations for the Texas Longhorns. And remember, that was a huge recruiting weekend for the Texas Longhorns. Is it bad that you lost this game? It's not the end of the world, but it's certainly not the look you wanted for all of those recruits that were in-house. Now, Texas has historically been able to recruit, even if they have down seasons. We understand this, but it's still all about perception. In a perfect world, you would have loved to win that game because you would have been able to exit the weekend with more recruiting momentum. Now you're going to have to hit the drawing board, go talk to all these recruits, and I'm not saying it's going to preclude you from getting any of those guys, but you certainly wanted that win, and it was big for your hopes of the Big 12. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens for the Texas Longhorns now, but if you're asking questions and saying, what does Texas need to work on, they need to get some more offensive consistency, because I think that's the biggest area that's a little bit head-scratching right now. And Steve Sarkisian is a brilliant offensive mind, but at the same time, there are things that just don't make sense. And another thing before I move on to this Texas A&M game, and once again, all credit goes to Fanatic Perspective. Unbelievable work. Guys, if you're here listening right now, please do me one favor. Head over to his channel, hit that subscribe button, genuinely. He was talking about the roster mismanagement under Steve Sarkisian, and it's something I never really realized. How they're playing guys and burning red shirts, but whenever they play the guy, they're only playing them for one play here, 2 plays here, and that's all the action they'll get that game. They might not even get a look. So you're just burning red shirts off of 1 or 2 plays. You're not even giving those dudes real reps that would actually build that they can continue getting better off of. That was mind-blowing to me. I don't understand the reasoning there. I don't understand the logic there. If one of you do, please drop it down in the comments. I'd love to learn. But the fact that it seems like you're burning red shirts for the sake of burning red shirts, I don't know. That just really doesn't add up to me. It's going to be something we have to watch. But now, the game that's a real head-scratcher, and that's Texas A&M versus Auburn. Because if you want to talk about the two teams where there is smoke pouring out of their facilities because there's so much chaos, I think everybody would point to Texas A&M and Auburn, and what a game this was. Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher, they've got a lot to answer for this offseason, and I don't think there's any way around it. That recruiting class they got last year was so good. The expectations were so high, and I think a lot of people could argue they were too high for A&M coming into the season, but I don't think you're going to find anybody that will tell you they thought this was the expectation for this Texas A&M team, that they thought this Texas A&M team would struggle to this degree. As always, I started the episode with it. I'm going to finish it with this same statement, the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. But at the end of the day, what we do know is that things just aren't working for Jimbo Fisher and A&M right now. It just doesn't seem like they can ever consistently have this momentum. It seems like anytime something starts going Texas A&M's way, they find a way to give that momentum to the other team. Whether that's pre-week, right? Whether Texas A&M's having a great week of practice and then something comes out that becomes a major distraction. All of us are now talking about Texas A&M because of what happened, or if it's during the course of a game. Texas A&M is going to be a really interesting team to watch. We've asked several times, what's the status of Jimbo Fisher? Could he be on the hot seat? And though I've consistently said, hey, I don't think he's on the hot seat just yet, look, you keep losing games like that to a program in Auburn that just fired their head coach. They don't even have a head coach right now. You lose to Auburn. You lose in the fashion you've been losing. It gets more and more difficult to justify the price A&M is paying for you. And I've said this consistently. I'm not here to say Jimbo Fisher is a terrible head coach, but what I think is one of the worst things Texas A&M have done in previous years is giving Jimbo Fisher that contract extension. Want to know why? Because they paid him like he was winning national championships and competing seriously with Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, and Ryan Day. Yeah, you beat Nick Saban. You haven't made it to the college football playoff. You have not showed us you can have consistent 9-10 win seasons. And if anything, the one season you showed us that was really good looks more like a one-off than the standard. And I've heard from Texas A&M fans, but that one season they showed us what they could be. And the only thing I can ever think is at a certain point we have to look at that as a one-off rather than the standard. Because more times than not, Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M are showing us they are not that team. They've showed us time and time again they are not that team. So where does Texas A&M go from here? Well, first and foremost, you've got to get the quarterback position right. And luckily for you, I think Weigman has a bright future. I think A&M fans need to be very happy that they found him because as a true freshman, 5-star talent, you'd like to think you have time with him, which is only going to build up the consistency you have in your offense. You've got some guys on the outside, Nevin Stewart, that as long as you can keep these guys here, you like what you have. But it's all about trying to fix the chaos there right now. Because Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies have been nothing but chaotic all year. And one of the questions we had to ask last time whenever they had some decommitments is, could we see an exodus from Texas A&M to the transfer portal? And if they don't start fixing some things, I think the answer could be yes. Now, I'm not sitting here telling you it will happen, but they have been so chaotic. There has been so many distractions, and the on-field play has been bad. I don't think there's any other way to put it. There's only so much you can battle through. And we talked about this before. Is winning something that is mandatory in terms of recruiting? And now with the existence of the transfer portal, is winning mandatory and being able to maintain a roster? I think the answer is no. But we also have to ask the question, what does winning usually entail? Winning usually entails consistency. Consistency typically entails development. And if you have those, you can sell guys, hey, stay here. We might not have had our year. We might not have had the best year, but you're a catalyst to this. You can be a piece that helps us turn this around. And hey, we might not have had the year, but we showed time and time again there's something we're building towards. Unfortunately for Texas A&M, I just haven't seen that this year. And we heard from Jimbo Fisher say earlier, hey, if you are in a situation where you're losing, that means that these recruits that you're talking to, they have an ability to play sooner rather than later. But Jimbo, you just had the number one recruiting class of all time. You had a good recruiting class before then. It's not like your team is devout of talent. It's one of the most talented rosters in college football. So yes, typically if you have a team that's losing, that can provide opportunities for younger players to play. But what happens when a lot of your players are true freshmen? What happens when you recruit at the level you do and still we're in this situation? Well, it's going to be interesting to see. And especially with the existence of the transfer portal. Because college football is fundamentally shifting. Both in terms of recruiting, in terms of on-field play, and in terms of what happens in the offseason. There are major fundamental shifts coming in college football. And right now, Texas A&M might just be a case study to seeing how all of this can be managed. It's going to be incredibly interesting to see what happens. I maintain that while I don't think Jimbo Fisher should be fired because you have tied up so much money to him, I still think that contract extension made zero sense. And we've talked about this before. The only functional difference between Jimbo Fisher and Kevin Sumlin is Jimbo Fisher is getting in higher rated recruiting classes than Kevin Sumlin. But honestly, I don't think that's something that really helps your case. Because once we establish, Jimbo gets higher rated recruiting classes in, the next question we have to ask, is he getting better results because he has better players? And the answer is no. Jimbo Fisher has less ranked wins. He has less road ranked wins. The only thing Jimbo Fisher has done better than Kevin Sumlin is recruit and lose to group of 5 teams. At a certain point, questions have to be asked, and I think Texas A&M really handcuffed themselves and didn't allow for any questions to be asked by giving him this contract extension. And now you're sitting here looking at a coach that seemingly has lost all control of the program, and you're tied to him because you wanted to pay him like he's Nick Saban. It was one of the most nonsensical things I've seen then. It remains one of the most nonsensical things I see to now. Not saying he can't coach. I'm saying if you're going to pay someone Nick Saban money, they should probably be giving you Nick Saban results, not just beating Nick Saban once every 3 years and saying, oh, there I go, pat on the back, now pay me. That's a moral victory. And if you're Texas A&M, you should not accept moral victories. Hop down to the comments. Super interested in hearing from all of you. What a week of college football it was. What a week of sports it was. I mean, my goodness gracious. UFC last night was insane at Madison Square Garden. I think there was 11 knockouts in that. I mean, it was wild. Israel Adesanya got upset. Just an incredible night of sports. Can't wait to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.